Foucault on sex. In his book, The History of Sexuality, the French intellectual historian Michel Foucault considers what he called the repressive hypothesis, the common idea that sex is something that earlier period, particularly the 19th century, have repressed and that moderns have fought to liberate. Far from being something natural that was repressed, Foucault suggests sex is a complex idea produced by a range of social practice, investigation, talk, and writing, discourse or discursive practice for short, that come together in 19th century. All the sort of talk by doctors, clergy, novelists, psychologists, this is moralists, social workers, politicians, that we link with the idea of the repression of sexuality, where in fact way of bringing into being the thing we call sex. Foucault writes, the notion of sex mate is possible to group together in an artificial unity, anatomical elements, biological function, conducts, sensation, and pleasure. And it enable one to make use of this fictions unity as this is a casual principle on omnipresent meaning, a secret to be discovered everywhere. And Foucault is not denying that there are physical act of sexual intercourse, or that humans have biological sex and sexual organs. He is claiming that the 19th century found a new way of grouping together under single category sex, a range of things that are potentially quite different. A certain act which we call sexual, biological distinction, a part of bodies and psychological reaction, and above all, social meaning, people's way of talking about and dealing with this conduct and sensation and biological function created something different, and artificial unity called sex, which came to be treated as fundamental to the identity of the individual. They, by a crucial reversal, these things called sex was seen as the cause of variety of phenomena that had been grouped together to create the idea. This process gave sexuality a new importance and new role, making a sexuality a secret of individual nature. Speaking of the importance of sexual urge and our sexual nature, Foucault notes that we have reached the point. Where we expect our intelligibility to come from what was many centuries thought as the madness, our identity from what was the perceived as the nameless urge, and hence the importance we ascribe to it, and the devotional fear with which is surrounding it, and the care we take to know it, and hence the fact that our centuries it has become more important to us than our soul. So one illustrate of the way sex was made the secret of the individual being, a key source of individual identity, is the creation is the 19th century of the homosexual as a type almost a species. Earlier periods had a stigma, and this is the stigma act of sexual intercourse between individual of the same sex, and such as sodomy. But now it became a question not of act but of identity. Okay, not of whether someone had performed forbidden action, but of whether he was homosexual. And sodomy was an act, and Foucault writes, but the homosexual was now a species. Previously there were is homosexual act in which people might engage. Now it was a question rather of sexual core, and essence is to the determine the very beginning the individual is he a homosexual question mark. In Foucault account, sex is constructed by the discourse linked with various social practice and institution, the way in which doctors, clearly in public official and social workers and even novelists treat and phenomena they identify as sexual, but this discourse represent sex as something superior to the discourse themselves. Modern have largely accepted this picture and of course this discourse and social practice of trying to control and repress the sex. They are in fact constructing, and this is reversing this process. And Foucault analyzes treat the sex as effect rather than of cause, the product of discourse which attempt to analyze and describe and regulate the activities of human beings. And Foucault's analysis in example of argument from the field of history that has become theory because it has inspired being taken up by people in other fields. It is not a theory of sexuality, the sense of set of axioms purported to be universal. It claimed to be an analysis of particular historical development, but it clearly has a broader implication. It encourages you to be spacious and what identify that natural as the given. Might it not, on the contrary, have been produced by the discourse of experts, by the practice of linked and discourse knowledge, and that claim to be described it. And Foucault account, it is the attempt to know the truth about human beings, and that has produced sex as a secret human nature.